So there's many ways and reasons to tell a personal story, a burst story. And there's many ways to listen to a burst story. So sometimes there's the social burst story where people get together and they just swap stories for bonding, to be uplifting, social. Other times there's commiseration storytelling where they either kind of compete for who suffered the most, or they bond through their disappointment and their trauma. Nothing much happens during that, but it's a social story. It's a social story. There's also usually along the evolution of a story, especially something as important as a burst story, there'll come a time when the mother or the father are looking for a quest story. And this is when they want to know what happened and why, and what is the meaning of it, or how they can learn something for it. So from it, so that the suffering has meaning, the loss of a dream has meaning.
Is that another way that people share stories, is looking for meaning in the medical story? That they try to sort out the facts and what actually happened and why it happened. And maybe the quest story that you just mentioned is going even deeper. Many times it's also about identity. It's also about what it means about me.
The storyteller tells her story from any number of archetypes, and the archetype that tells the quest story is the huntress. Now, the gatherer is the part of us that gathers information or opinions from other people. But by the time you moved along far enough in the evolution of a story, human beings want to evolve. I mean, all of nature is evolving. It's a natural thing in the natural world and human psyche. So it's the huntress who comes and says, "Who am I? Who am I because this happened? Who am I becoming?"
Yeah. And I feel that there's two forces. One force is a force that makes us really go into our problems, right? And again and again and again, and go in circles in the revolving door and not find a way out. And you need a burst story session, for example, to have a hand on your back to move through a revolving door. But also there is this really big force of life, of change. Things do change. Things do evolve. This is not, things change when we want them to change and when we don't want them to change.
Yeah. When someone is ready for the quest story, when the huntress now wants to tell the story and hunt for the meaning, something changes. And in the earlier phases of the story, the attention might have been directed outward to what happened to me, what other people said, what other people told me to do, what interventions happened to me. And all of that is important. But when you come to the quest story, the attention it flips like a pancake. And so it's what's going on inside. What is my story? What is my feeling now? And it becomes the living story, not the story of the past, but the living story that's arising now. There's a quote that I'd like to share with you that comes from the book called The Wounded Storyteller by Arthur Frank. And he describes different kinds of narrative stories. There's the chaotic story, the restitution story, and one of them is the quest story. And he says, when the storyteller's on a quest, they're looking to find something good or meaningful from their experience, from their loss. In the quest story, the storyteller is experiencing a reflexive quality of their journey. And through personal story work, the storyteller is being formally initiated into the experience that initiated them. And that just blew my mind, because that's exactly what's happening in burst story work. So when they were in the experience of the initiation of birth, and postpartum, and the transition to motherhood or fatherhood, when they're in the transition or the ordeal of that, they're so busy being immersed in it, doing what needs to happen next, that they're not even aware that an initiation or a transformation is occurring. It's only when they come full stop, which can take weeks or months and even years, and they look back and they're in a formal birth story session, when they experience, as he says, they're being formally initiated into the experience that has already initiated them.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we don't know, as we are being initiated, that we are now being initiated. It's life initiating us, and then looking back and making sense of it and realizing what died and what was born or is being born, who I was and who I am right now, and who I am right now and who I am right now. When this shift happens, you only know it in retrospect, or you can only really understand, and like he says, be initiated into what already initiated you in retrospect. And I don't think that's an easy thing to do on your own. I think many times you need a mentor to do
Certainly,
it.
it really accelerates it to have a mentor holding that space for you. And when I read that, it made me feel like every time I do a birth story session, really I'm in a ceremony of that reflexive initiation, of really reflecting on an initiation that's occurred, so that she can acknowledge what's happened.
Yeah, and holding in our hearts and in the way that we see and then we look at the story, that it's a heroic story or a story of initiation. Then I feel that we're becoming part of the allies, right, of the story so we are the ally of that person. It's just, there's something about us looking at it as an initiation story, not the way that modern society looks at a birth story, right? It gives it so much more depth. It's looking at it as this, and a story of transformation of identity, and that's beautiful, and it is it's sacred.
For me, it's like we're reflecting on an initiation, which is part of the initiation. But don't you feel that after 1 or 2 or 3 sessions, whatever it was required, that's also completing the initiation, letting it come home to rest, like letting her come home to herself? Because unless this work is done, there's a part of us hanging out there, like just sort of floating, like we didn't quite end it, we're kind of moving forward. It's just, something just feels so untethered. And to have this point to stop and reflect and really put words to an experience.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It honors what we went through. So there's one more quote that I would like to mention here from Susanna Rupsat. She wrote the beautiful book, Mourning the Dream, Amor Fati. Amor Fati means loving our fate. And she's a Jungian analyst, and she's works with the mythopoetic process, and her book is beautiful. She says, and this is one of my favorite quotes from her book: "The future cannot be changed because it has not yet happened, but the past can be changed to what it was meant to be. We have the ability to move beyond our present myth, assumptions, and prescriptions into our living myth that is unfolding in this very moment."
Yeah. Well, you sent me this quote, and I read it, and I was just like, oh my God, we got it all upside down. Because usually what we say to each other is that the past cannot be changed, but the future can. So let's fix ourselves and change the future. And she looks at it and says, this is the other way around. It's the other way around. The future cannot be changed. It hasn't happened yet. It's total openness of who knows what's going to happen. But the past is just a narration that we have of our past, and that can be changed. And that was mind-blowing for me, even though I know it. it was mind-blowing the way she switched it, and the way that I thought, oh my God, we actually walk around life saying the opposite. We keep telling ourselves the only thing that can be changed is the future. The whole society is trying to change the future. She's saying, hey, you can change your past because the past is a narration of the past. That's amazing.
It was, it's really stops and makes you think. It's a beautiful quote. So thank you all for coming to our first podcast of 2023. We're glad you joined us. Please go see our new website at birthstorymedicine.com. There are 4 new pages dedicated to storytellers, be they parents or birth attendants, and explains the birth story medicine process and the 3 kinds of sessions we offer. So please go check it out and enjoy all the colors, and come see us at one of our offerings this year.
Yeah, see you there.